Hi, good evening. Recently, I've been talking a lot about the ability to entertain contradictory information at the same time and be willing and open to accepting both as being equally so. I talked of 3 videos or 4 videos again about cognitive dissonance. Cognitive is the working of the mind, and dissonance is like disharmony. So cognitive dissonance refers to people's inability to do what I just spoke of. The people aren't able to entertain opposites, contradictory information at the same time. So what they will do, commonly they'll do, is discard what doesn't fit their structure, their belief system, this self-constructed concept of who and what and where and why they are. So I talked about learning the skill to be able to entertain, to be able to grasp that opposites are truly not me, you. They're truly not polar opposites, but they're on the scale of things. They're part of a non-dualistic concept. And that leads you to kind of absurdities, if you think about it, love and hate. I always talk about free will or preordained destiny. And I believe that they're both equally so. And I'm able to internalize them without dissonance means disharmony. I can stay in harmony. In fact, it's critical for your advancement to begin to understand that within the concept of the lie of the concept of otherness, opposites, polarities. And it's really apparent when I look at America, where a solid 1/3 of the people don't still believe Trump is president because he says he is. They take everything he said as gospel. It's in the St. James Version of the Bible. When Christ spoke, it was always in red letters. And Donald Trump, for whatever reason, has assumed this kind of influence. So there's 30% of people that if Trump said up was down and down was up, they would totally agree. And they don't want that. You can't change their mind. You can't convince them, because doing so, they have to entertain this idea that there's another opinion. Can there be two truths? Equally true? So either Trump is president or he's not. So they can't entertain the idea that even a maybe he isn't, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. They have to dismiss out of hand. And this is how people keep it together. With their limited understanding, their limited resources. So you have to separate yourself. Anything that flies in the face, anything that contradicts your carefully constructed illusion of self, of your boundaries, of your belief system, even to the point of, who's your president? Who's my president? Yeah. But I became really fascinated in this, and I was watching this roundtable with actors talking about how they managed to cope with fame, how they managed to learn to keep themselves in check without excesses, with excesses, whether it's drugs or sex or you name it. We can overdose on anything. Water even. And certainly information. Just too much. But I was really curious how 30% of my fellow countrymen are in the cult of the in the Donald Trump cult, card-carrying cult members, where whatever he says is so, and everything else is a conspiracy or a lie, or someone's trying to infringe, someone's trying to take from, someone's trying to deprive them of their perceived rights, of their perceived beliefs. And one of the actors talked about people have a prism of blindness. And since this goes right, it flies in the face, it goes right along with when I'm talking about cognitive dissonance, the inability to entertain contrasting or conflicting, apparent conflicting information. Joe Biden's the president-elect. No. Donald Trump will remain to be president, even though he resoundingly lost the vote. And it's being certified as we speak. Votes have been recounted. So this cry of fraud, conspiracy, and from Donald's point of view, it's really about fundraising. He's selling, he's getting these people to pay his debt that he's in for not only his presidential campaign, but his own personal debt that's going to come due. The collectors are going to knock on the door. It's no longer the White House door. So he has a vested interest. But I'm not really concerned about him. I don't care about him. He's yesterday's news. But what I'm interested in is this blindness, this cult-like behavior to just accept anything that comes out of, you know that old saying, white men speak with forked tongue? Well, I think his forked tongue is forked. I picture like a snake with a forked tongue, but his is twofold. 2 forks and 2 more. But anyway, that's just me. But what interests me is this blindness. They call it a prism of blindness. And a prism in optics, in the vision, a prism is a solid body, usually triangular, solid body, that's used for dispersing light into a spectrum of reflecting rays of light. So this triangular pyramid-shaped prism, glass prism, sometimes the triangles are not equilateral. Sometimes they're purposely unbalanced, so that the light reflected, you can do things with your light. You can take white light and divide it through. The most common prism that we're used to is to see the rainbows, the colors in the specific order of intensity that we experience in a rainbow. And I'm using prism in terms of distortion. It not only breaks down, it takes white light, which is just a combination of all the wavelengths of light, and breaks it down to the different frequencies. And from what a little I understand, when we see blue, like a blue sky and a blue ocean, it's because the sky in the ocean absorb the other colors and only reflect the blue. So prism is about distortion. And I've talked about my lifelong dedication to clarity, how that I was labored for 33 years in my Zen, Rinzai Zen, strict practice, adherence to rigorous rules, and conduct myself in a certain manner, all in the search of clarity. I wanted to be clear, but I wasn't quite sure. I never spent much time what that meant. I assumed that it meant clarity of thought. But clarity can be feeling, clarity can be many things. And what I took away from my study of Zen, as superficial as it may have been, is the concept of going from trying to tame the mind, trying to shut down the inner dialogue, the monkey mind, the constant chatter. And you did this through rigorous discipline. It was an aggressive act. You had to begin by trying to quiet, and then it escalated into still, and it culminated in silence. And only once you silence the mind are you gifted with clarity. And I mentioned the irony that in this struggle to attain clarity in the discipline, I was gifted with equanimity. And equanimity means to face the world on an even keel, to stay calm, cool, and collected in the face of fire, in the face of love, in the face of any challenge that the outside world or the inside world brings to your arena. Equanimity. And it's so funny that I was so focused on what I was pursuing that maybe this was my prism of blindness. Maybe this distortion, I certainly distorted what Zen was talking about. I can be corrected, but I found out that only by release, by giving up this striving, this effort to attain clarity, only by striving, only by giving this up and saying, I can't quiet my mind, it's impossible, it's a constant chatter. And then as far as silencing, that seemed counterproductive because now I've retrained my mind to use my mind in the way that I believe it was intended. At least my brain was intended, my mind was intended to find, sort, file, and store information. It wasn't about evaluating that information. It was just about refining the available input. And I left it to my heart to work out when this process of separation, what so much goes in the trash can, so much is deleted. But what's kept now is this just useful information, and use being the term here. Was this useful information? Did it lead towards knowledge? And if so, did that knowledge have the possibility of containing wisdom? And this is what I put in my mind would just sort. I let my mind have the job of, getting rid of the useless. But then the rest went in the category of file that I would have to spend time ruminating, meditating over, evaluating. But the mind was definitely not for, I made up my mind. It's not about willpower or won't power. I won't do this. I will do this. And my mind is strong and blah, 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 blah. No, your mind is not strong. Your ego is strong. And your ego is a trickster. It just convinces your mind that, oh holy mind, you will tell me what to do. No. Your mind is it's a false narrative to think that your mind is here to resolve how you live your life. That's in the realm of the heart. What's important? What your goals are, how to reach your goals. All of that is beyond the scope, and it's only the ego that climbs onto the mind because the mind is weak. Most of us. The mind is very weak, and it's the ego that's strong. And the ego clings onto the mind to help perpetuate its existence. Now you have to understand, once you start questioning your ego, it begins fighting for its life. Literally. And that's why for some people, when they finally reject the ego, they feel kind of an emptiness. Well, they're looking for something to fill that emptiness, instead of, like I've learned, to appreciate emptiness. Appreciate the space between breathing in and out. Appreciate the time or the space between heartbeats. This is really where I start to look for the essence of things. The heart of the matter, the essence of things, is in between the notes, as I've heard my musician friends say. The pause between words. The pause between thinking and speaking, which I've learned that the longer you can expand that pause, the more mindfulness that you place on what's coming out of you. I was one of those, boom, out it comes. And usually it's perceptive and precise, but it's usually punishing. And most people it was directed to, I can see within 2 minutes, within 5 seconds, the critical issue for every individual I come across. And I can go to it with pinpoint accuracy. And nobody's prepared. I had to learn that only when I'm invited. Because otherwise, you end up... If someone comes to you with a relationship problem, and trust me, as a college professor, a lot of my girls, because they knew they could talk to me, they come to me with relationship problems. And they would ask me, tell me the situation, and ask me what I thought. And it was really slow to offer up any opinion on my own. What I did through experience is I listened to them, and if I could, in almost clear conscious, give them feedback that supported the decision that they already had come to. Every question, we already entertaining a solution. And if somebody supports our solution by offering up advice that's congruent, that's in keeping with our preconceived idea, they walk away and say, oh, what a nice guy, and he's happy. But if you make the mistake of really offering your unsolicited, unwanted, undesired perception, no matter how acute, how accurate, you've pretty much made an enemy. Either they just stop listening, they shut down. So this is that cognitive dissonance. If I get conflicting information if I'm an average guy. I would have to discard what didn't support my preconceived, my position, my value system, my ego. If it didn't support that, I have to discard it. And someone mentioned to me that the average person is not very smart. And average means that half the people are less smart than the not so smart average. So somewhere, anyway, these people that will not budge in the light of any new information other than new information that's given to them who's captured their fealty, their loyalty, their worship from Jesus all the way down to as profane as Trump. People are just inclined. And this is what I mean by prism of blindness. We're blind to so many things. Blinders, like they put on the horse, so the peripheral vision is the horse can only look ahead. It can't be distracted by peripheral vision. And it's interesting when I talk about peripheral vision, because one of the things that happened to me as I progressed from non-abiding, temporary awakening into permanent, abiding awakening, my peripheral vision increased, and it's practically 360 degrees. And this is when I talk about the fourth eye. We know two in here, the pineal gland, but I swear there's a fourth eye. There's some sensitivity. I know what's going on behind me, and I experience that is expanded like a fisheye lens that lets you see 360. I can't quite get to 360, but I'm back here somewhere. And certainly sensitive to this fourth eye is open and aware of what's behind me. So this blindness, this refracted light that we choose to see part of there's a whole spectrum. It's actually, again, circular or spherical spectrum, but we choose just to see a limited length, a limited wavelength of this. And this is prism of blindness. And it could be prison of blindness just as well. We're kept in prison by our blindness, and our blindness is based on several things: using the mind to make decisions. There's a fool's game. And using our belief systems to evaluate truth. Using our ego to give us some sense of the solid in a world of translucence or transparency. The illusion of solidness. You hear that, but I know from simple physics and then even deeper into quantum physics that there's more empty space. This is what I was talking about, entertaining the empty. Don't be so quick to fill it. I had a friend that spoke sparingly, and everybody would try to compensate. Everybody would fill in the blank spaces because we get awkward. It's socially awkward if the silence, you'll see, you're aware of it. If silence lasts too long, someone will break the silence and want to, we feel awkward. But my friend would just sit with the silence. He understood value and the beauty of emptiness. And emptiness is not nothingness. In fact, nothingness and emptiness are another polarity that you could entertain at the same time through training and experience and willingness to do so. And trust me, I had no idea that the last conscious step that I took between the time of leaving impermanent, non-abiding awareness and entering the realms of permanent, abiding awareness, I was completely surprised that the last conscious experience that I can recall was this reconciliation, being able to entertain perhaps the prism of my blindness was imploded or exploded, but I was no longer blind to what division and separation, how that kept us from remembering the forgotten, remembering once again what we've always known, stepping over the threshold to Buddhahood. And as I've said, and I continue to say, we're all Buddhas in different states of awakeness. Some are in a coma, a lot. Maybe that 30%. Anyway, enough said about the 30%. But to break the prism, to break out of prison, to break out of jail, to go beyond of your self-imposed limitation, because we're limitless. We're sourced from limitlessness. There's no beginning and no end. And that's liberating. So this conscious memory that I have of leaving dualism, us and them, me and you, up and down, love and hate, right and wrong, leaving those or accepting those, including those, is a better way to share this. Including, it's inclusion. It's including, it's understanding that our minds are capable of a lot more than we give them credit for. So I'm fascinated by this prison of blindness, these people that refuse to wear masks. I know my friends here in Asia can't really understand why so many Americans and Europeans are so dead set against. It's that 30% again. And I talked about last time my number being 33. Maybe it's 33%. 33% have cognitive, are afraid, or terrified, or cannot entertain cognitive dissonance, or go into cognitive dissonance. They shut down if they try to entertain opposites at the same time. And this calls for suspension of not only suspension of belief, but more importantly, I think, suspension of disbelief. That's not possible. This is not possible. Hey, I look at you and tell you right now, anything's possible. Everything's possible. And yet, at the same time, so that you can start this exercising your brain, nothing is possible. Nothingness is possible. Nihilism is possible. Everything is possible. And anywhere in the spectrum in between, any degree of certainty. I'm certain. I'm uncertain. I think the best, safest answer a lot of times is don't know. Like the Zen monk taught me. And it was important. No pronoun. I don't know. Don't know. And the context was, who is I, me, my? These are the questions. What's life about? Who am I? Why am I here? And his question was, who is I, me, my? And he said the only answer is, don't know. Don't know. And even today, those words, don't know. I've never been afraid to admit I don't know. In fact, it's liberating. Try it. Don't know. Feels so good. So why are people trapped? Why are people so protective of their prism of blindness or their prison of blindness? And again, let's go to that universal solution. Don't know. Like we said, it's above my pay grade. So I want to wrap this up with just sharing. It's possible. This also happened to me in my transition, my 3-day period from non-abiding, impermanent awakening to abiding, permanent awakening, is to be exposed. Whatever can be known, can be known. And this was part of this experience when I was inundated with everything, past and future. And not too much of the present. I didn't have to worry about the present because I already by then had trained myself to be in the present. But past and future. Everything that has been known or will be known or can be known is knowable. For one brief speck of time, I was aware that I knew everything. And now I had to, you have to do something with knowing everything. And it's there, it's filed. But I live with the caveat that I'll know what I need to know it when I need to know it.